Hello again, Steve here with a few words on what a great time it is to be alive. And I would say this because there's a lot of hysteria going on. It sounds counterintuitive to say something like that, maybe. But, in any great confusion, great kerfuffle, great, turmoil, you might say, there is lots and lots of opportunity to learn about ourselves. And that is, to me anyways, that's the most important thing to learn in life, is about something about ourselves. It's interesting to me because I've been involved with a freedom movement for quite some time now, and the writing has been on the wall for things to come, right? So a lot of people think, it's amazing how, well, let me just take a step back here. I remember a story one time about a real estate boom, and this guy had been a real estate investor. He could see the trends coming on and so on, and he had invested well and whatever. And one time he got into an elevator, and just some average guy, I think it was the bellhop or whatever of a elevator at a hotel. The bellhop was all excited about maybe buying some real estate. And at that point, the guy who was the investor said to himself, okay, now it's time to sell my real estate because everybody knows about it. It's the end of the boom. It's the pinnacle, if you will. And it's interesting now how all of a sudden people are they're confounded by guys like Trump, and they're confounded by people who actually want freedom. So something's really happening right now. It's the end of a rise of something. And there's a big sea change about to happen because it looks like absolute madness going on. But when you're an observer of history and you're an observer of trends, you realize that things always go along slowly, and then they just trajectory right up, almost vertical, and to a point where then they crash, where things change. It's like the pendulum. The pendulum swings up, and then at a certain point, it absolutely, completely reverses. And that's what we're seeing now. We're seeing the rise of alternative views of seeing things. And however, in this time, we have to be aware, those of us who are on the freedom train, to be cognizant of ever improving ourselves. I was listening to a guy not long ago who was being interviewed. He's named Jesse Lee Peterson, and to some people he's very controversial. So controversial that in his gym he was talking about Trump or something like that on the phone, and the gym had him thrown out. And it wasn't like he was new to the gym. He'd been in that gym for something like 10 or 20 years. He was a long time client, and most of the people there knew him. He was good friends with a lot of people. But this is the hysteria, and this is how you can tell it's at the end of a trend, when people go completely berserk. And the commoners, in a way, have deep-seated opinions, even if they're not informed. Deep-seated opinions, just like the guy, hey, it's time to buy real estate, and it's Reddit, it's the worst time to buy real estate. So I think that there's something to be learned here, and it's interpersonal skills. Because we see people who will go out in the streets with baseball bats and yell at each other and so on over ideas. But you know what? If we could find a way to, and in this situation, we understand that no matter what, if we're on one side or the other side, we can understand the danger of engaging people who are that emotionally wound up. So what I was talking about when I did my freedom walk was the importance of finding that friendship connection, finding that common ground of connection. And I think, for the most part, we have to leave politics out of it and connect with people's humanity first. Because even if people have totally different approaches to politics, or whatever it is, if there's a friendliness, trust relationship there, then maybe the conversations can come out and be constructive, and we don't have to resort to all sorts of things. So I think one of the greatnesses of this time is our challenge to be able to communicate goodwill, at least at the first time approach, without the instantaneous judgment, oh, that guy's a leftist, or that guy's a right wing, or that guy's a so-called Nazi, or whatever. a lot of these things, well, you could probably say most of them are just projections that people are throwing out there in labels, but they don't know anything about the individual. And in many cases, they don't know themselves. We don't know ourselves. So how the hell can we know somebody else and what they mean by what they're talking about? So that was my message when I was on my walk, and I think it stands pretty strong in my consciousness to this day, which is that to have a friendliness and a goodwill towards others as an initial approach. And then once that is settled into a little bit, then there can be peace, right? Because there doesn't have to be this jabbing at each other. And when we can have peace, we can have conversations. And when we can have conversations, we can actually have freedom. We can get down to freedom, which maybe some people don't want, and maybe it's not always going to work. But let's hedge our bets, right? Let's give the benefit of the doubt to everybody we meet, at least initially, to say, hey, let's be friendly. And let's listen. At least we can initiate that part of listening. And maybe we can find some common ground. In some cases, we're not going to, for sure, right? Because there's always statistical averages. But in some cases, I think this is going to work better than just yelling people down and calling names and escalating that, because it'll only go to one direction. So names begin, and then we can see it. We can see it in the streets. We can see it in the streets escalating to people going out with helmets and clubs, to then people tearing down statues, to then what's next? Is it going to be publicly dragging people through the street by their heels? You know, this is what mad animals do. This is what, rabid dogs do. They go crazy. We're human beings, and that is not human behavior at all, as far as I'm concerned. Human behavior is coming off of our highest faculties, which is our faculty of reason, our faculties of empathy, and so on, at least as initial approach. Yes, we also have that human tendency to defend ourselves when it comes to that. But let's start with the approach of higher human attributes, which is to start with friendliness. Steve here again, great chatting. Talk again soon. Bye for now.